Hello, today we will be discussing about post-colonialism. As you all know, colonialism, what is colonialism? Colonialism is the extension of a nation's sovereignty beyond its borders by the establishment of settler colonies in which the indigenous populations are directly ruled or displaced. This can be considered as a definition to colonialism. Colonialism basically means another country is ruling over our country. For example, how British Raj ruled over India. It's an example of colonialism, okay? And coming to imperialism is a set of beliefs used to promote colonialism. So, how did colonialism spread? It's through how it promoted colonialism, that is called imperialism. Then when you talk about post-colonialism, we have to remember the term cultural hegemony. Cultural hegemony, what is cultural hegemony? A culture is considered superior to other based on the ethnocentric belief that the morals and values of the colonizer were superior to those of the colonized. In a place where one culture is considered superior and the other culture is considered inferior, it is called cultural hegemony. For example, in the West, whites were considered superior over the blacks. So that's an example of cultural hegemony. Then talking about European colonialism, there are major two waves in European colonialism. First wave was the age of discovery, where these Europeans used to discover various lands of America and India, and like that many expeditions happened during the age of discovery, or the first wave, that was between 1492 and 1852. Coming on to the second wave was more imperialistic, like after 1850 to the end of First World or Second World War, where they started building colonies all over the world and started being more imperialistic. Okay, that was the two waves of European colonialism. And why did they colonize these much countries? What was the purpose of colonialism? First, it can be land and settlement, to conquer different lands and to have various settlements. Then to spread religion or religious purposes can be a reason. Then there was an exploitative and economic purpose were there, because they wanted to loot other countries. For example, $45 trillion were looted from India during their 173 years of rule. Okay. And there was also a purpose called moral purpose, which is often called by foreigners as white man's burden, which is also a poem written by Rudyard Kipling. What is white man's burden? It is a moral sense of responsibility, since they are morally, culturally, ethnically, and intellectually superior to all other people, to educate, to enlighten, and to civilize. So there is a white man's burden, where it was in the shoulders of the white man, or it is the duty of the white man to educate or to enlighten or to civilize the people belonging to the other sections of society, or the blacks or the Indians. Such a kind of burden they accepted on their own, and they tried to loot other countries. It's just a simple excuse for looting other countries. And there is another term called social Darwinism. That is survival of the fittest, a feature of society to fight for the available resources. There was a social Darwinism because they wanted to survive. So they started looting other countries, going to other countries, and the bad thing they did was they tried to establish their power over other countries. Then only they can take their resources, they can establish their superiority on others, isn't it? So these were some of the purposes of colonialism. Then coming on to Western colonial history, as we all know, Christopher Columbus was the first man to find the Bahamas in 1492, and it was Vasco da Gama's discovery of sea route to India in 1498 that brought India to the outer world. And major colonial powers during that time were UK, France, Spain, etc. And the first phase of British colonialism concentrated in the New World, West Africa and India, and closed with the American Revolution. And during that time, Britain became a very established, very vast place, and it became the empire where the sun never sets, because all over the world Britain had its colonies. If in one place the sun sets, the other place the sun rises. So it became the empire. British Empire became the empire where the sun never sets. And coming to post-colonial studies, it began as a discipline in the late 1970s and 80s, and it was based on the political fiction or post-colonial fiction published immediately after Second World War. Okay, and it is also called Commonwealth or Third World Studies. What do you mean by Third World? Before that, let me tell you, Third World was the word coined by Alfred Sauvy in 1952. Alfred Sauvy coined the word Third World, which is the first world. US can be considered the first world. USSR, that means Soviet Union, was the second world, and all the other Commonwealth nations were considered the Third World. And there was also another term called Fourth World, which belonged to people within the Third World, that is subalterns or the aboriginal communities or the Dalits or the natives that belonged within the Third World countries were called the Fourth World. Okay, and Third World literature in the era of multinational capitalism was a famous essay written by Frederick Jameson. And aims of post-colonialism was to analyze the process of decolonization, study of cultures formerly or currently colonized, reclaims the past, and engages in new disciplines like South Asian studies, subaltern studies, resistance studies, historiographic revisionism, etc. And what did Europe do? Europe cut up Africa in unnatural ways. British divide and rule led to partition in India. We know that Europe or Britain's main policy was divide and rule, and Britain was the country that divided Africa into small pieces. And there were advertisements of soaps like, for example, Pierre's soap with the theme of white man's burden, encouraging white people to teach cleanliness to members of other classes. So as I told you, white man's burden was spread through different forms like advertisements, etc. And we could see many posters of aboriginals carrying white men, and aboriginals were treated as animals by these white men. And colonial literature was written during the age of colonization from the point of view of the colonizers. Okay. And therefore, colonial literature is basically based on the opinion of the colonizers, and post-colonialism only focused on the colonized people's views on how colonization affected them. And if you look at the colonial literature, or the literature of the British Empire, we have Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. What is the story of Robinson Crusoe? Crusoe as the archetypal colonizer, as he claims the land civilized and dominates Friday by renaming him, Christianized him, isn't it? So Crusoe can be, in Robinson Crusoe, can be considered as an example of colonizer, and that work was written by Daniel Defoe. Then we have Rudyard Kipling, who was called the prophet of British imperialism by George Orwell, and he wrote the work Plain Tales from the Hills. Okay, Plain Tales from the Hills, it was a collection of short stories, his first collection, and was set in Shimla, and a collection of short stories that reinforces the ideology of white superiority. The idea that British are civilizing a backward land was the major theme of Rudyard Kipling's Plain Tales from the Hills. Then another work is Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness and Lord Jim. What is the summary of Heart of Darkness? It is the story of Marlowe's journey into the Congo, which is a metaphor for Africa, and his encounter with Kurds. And while Conrad critiques European brutality in Africa, he also reduces Africans to shadows, like they are present but voiceless. Okay, that is all about Heart of Darkness. And E.M. Foster's A Passage to India. A Passage to India, set during the British Raj, the novel explores the tensions between British colonizers and Indian natives through characters like Dr. Aziz and Fielding. So these were some of the major works or literature of the British Empire.